everybody, I'm Rebecca. Today we're going to talk about the 4 myths of getting started in real estate. And honestly, I'm already going to give you cool stuff because we're going to go over 5 myths. And so here's the deal. The first thing that I really need to lay out and make sure everybody understands is asking advice is incredible, but it's one of the biggest ways that I see people just fail before they even start. You ask your mom, you ask your dad, you ask your uncle who's a contractor, should I do this? Should I flip a house? And they're like, hell no, you shouldn't flip a house. You're going to get way in over your head. And, you know, here's what I heard one time. The thing is, we ask people for advice who we trust their opinions, they're wiser than us, they're further down the road than us, and those are all amazing things. But there's one thing that those people have absolutely no idea about, and that's your motivation. So at the end of the day, they might have really good advice about all of the reasons that you shouldn't get involved in this, but the biggest factor, and they can never measure that, is your own motivation. How bad do you want this? How bad do you want to leave that 9-to-5 job? How bad do you need the money to save up for your college, for your kid? How bad do you want the win of just flipping a residential house? And nobody can measure that, especially people who've lived very in-the-box lives. They just don't get it a lot of times. And bless their hearts, they want what's best for you, but you have to stop asking those people for advice. So myth number 1 is that the people who are in your life actually know what they're doing. Wrong. Ask somebody who's flipped houses, and if they're like, bro, you're not cut out for this, maybe take that with a grain of salt. But please realize before you ask anyone for advice, they don't know what's going on in your heart, and what's going on in your heart, that intrinsic motivation back there, that's what's going to make you go far in this industry. Ask anybody at the top, ask anyone who has made millions and built incredible wealth, how many people believed in them in the very beginning. The answer is probably very few. And I've experienced the same thing. Tyler and I have. So many people told us, don't go down that road, don't get started, don't buy your first homes. I'll tell you a story. The very first house that we ever bought, we were living in Hawaii and moving back to Missouri because we just had a baby and wanted to be closer to family. We bought it sight unseen, never seen the house. We saw some pictures online, but that was it. We're like, yep, we want it, let's go. Do you know how many people told us not to do that? A lot. It was a lot of people that told us not to do that, but we didn't let them get in our head. We just jumped into it. So that's myth number 1. Stop asking for advice. The advice that everybody in your life knows what they're doing is probably really slim. Now, if you're in a family of contractors and a bunch of flippers, you might be the exception, but I can tell you right now, grandma loves you so much and she's so scared for you to do something really big and crazy that she's probably not going to be the most supportive in this. Maybe Little League Baseball, she was all about it. This one, not so much. So let's move on to myth number 2. I have to have money before I get started. No, you don't. You absolutely do not. Now, this is what I will tell you. Your personal finances need to be in line before you take on any of these projects. Do I mean you need to have all your debt in the world paid off? No, but I need you to have like a locked in monthly budget and things to be pretty stable at home. Otherwise, when the flip road gets rocky, everything's going to feel like it's falling apart. So do you need to have actual cash money to invest in these real estate flips before you get started? No, but do I need your personal finances to be like halfway in decent order? Yes, please, dear God, don't jump into this if your finances are bad, thinking this is going to save you. Now, let me tell you a couple of stories about money. Whenever we first got started in the flipping business, we had a great friend who my husband went to college with, and he helped us fund the flips. He had come into quite a bit of money, and he was like, hey, I want to dabble in the real estate. You guys have been dabbling in it for a while. Let's go in this. And we actually went into a 50-50 partnership. So how it would work is we would find the deals, and we would do the work and he would front all of the cash. And so that was our first experience with hard money. Now, that relationship worked out really, really well until we discovered that hard money actually doesn't have to cost 50%. So what we were doing is like, hey, you take on the risk, we'll take on the work. And everybody was really happy. We all made, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 off of a couple of flips and a couple of long-term rentals together. And we were all really happy. Now, what happened is we came into hard money. Again, this is just like a networking thing. A friend of a friend, we're like, hey, he's getting in the real estate business and he was lending money at about a 12% interest rate. Now, depending on when you watch this or what part of the country, and that may or may not still be the case, but we could borrow money at 12% and flip houses, which for us was way better than 50%. So we moved on to using this hard money lender for a while. Everything went really well. What would happen is they would divide. Let me just give you an example. Let's say I buy a $100,000 house and I use this person's hard money. Now he's literally wiring the cash to the title company for me to buy the house. And I start making monthly payments to him for as long as I have the house. Now this is where being able to complete work quickly and efficiently is going to save you money. It's really what makes or breaks flip projects, because my expense on hard money could go up, I don't know, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 really quickly if my 3-month flip turns into a 6-month flip. So if you and I are both purchasing a house, it's the exact same terms, but I can devote 40 hours to it a week and you can only devote 10, it might be a good flip for me and a bad flip for you. So this is another one of those times that we always have to take with a grain of salt. Just because someone else isn't interested in a property doesn't mean that I don't want to be interested in it. But back to the money. You don't have to have a whole bunch of money sitting in a bank account because there are people who will lend. If you have access to the deal or access to the work, then all you have to do is fill in those other holes that other people don't want to do. I can almost guarantee you that the people who have the money don't want to go out there and scrape popcorn ceilings. So if you don't have the money, but you have the willpower, I bet your hiney's about to get up on a ladder and scrape popcorn ceilings, which by the way is really satisfying. It like comes off in a big stick, like it honestly could be one of those oddly satisfying videos. It just all comes off and plops on the ground if it hasn't been painted. If the popcorn ceiling has been painted, no fun. You probably want to run far away from that or contract it. Anyway, so you don't have to have the money. Another way that you can qualify to buy these properties without having a large lump sum of cash is using a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So if you bought your house a while ago and you've got, let's say you bought your house for $100,000 and now it's worth $200,000, you can go to the bank and pull out a home equity line of credit and say, hey, Mr. Banker, I want access to this equity that's on top of my house. And literally they'll open a bank account and you can write yourself a check from that account to access. Typically it's 70 to 80% of the full current value of your home. So that's another way. And then you just pay yourself back at the end of the flip. Oh, I want to mention one other thing here about not having money to get started in real estate, because I hear people say all the time, gosh, I'd really like to buy a rental, but I'm not going to qualify. I don't have the money to qualify. A lot of times rentals are an easier way to get started into leveraging yourself into real estate wealth as opposed to flipping houses, just because there's less money up front. And how people do this is you can qualify to buy absolutely any rental house as long as the rent will cover the mortgage. So if you are looking for houses online, and a lot of times on the multiple listing system, homes sit for a while because they have a tenant in there. If the tenant is paying a price for the home that will cover the mortgage, then buying that rental will not count against your debt to asset ratio, because the lender goes, oh, hey, you're good to go because this already covers the mortgage. So you can buy it. I'll know for sure that I'll make my money because you already have a tenant in place and we're good to go. Now, on the flip side of it, if you're looking at a house that's been renovated and you're like, oh my gosh, this is in a great area, it would rent out really well. Along with your purchase contract, if you can find a renter, which there's some ways we can talk about that in a future video, if you can go ahead and find a renter, write yourself a rental contract for the house and get the earnest money, you can take the contract and the earnest money to almost any lender I've ever met and say, hey, give me a loan on this house. And underwriting will be like, great, because they're not necessarily underwriting you unless, again, back to the first point, you have a whole bunch of issues on your credit score and your finances are a mess. As long as your finances look okay, that rental that you just purchased already balances itself out. So you don't technically have to qualify for both houses at once. So there's myth number 2 busted about the finances. You don't have to have a big boatload of money. All you have to do is have a couple other pieces of the puzzle. Here's something else I hear all the time. I don't have the skills. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, yeah, me too. Let me see. For the second house that we ever bought, our first couple houses, by the way, we would buy them, we'd live in them, we'd renovate them, and then we'd move on. So we really like had a firsthand experience on what it looks like to renovate homes. So the first one that we bought, I will never forget, they wouldn't let me paint because I was pregnant. And I was like, well, fine, fumes, baby, whatever, I won't paint. But Tyler was gone at work one day and I'm like, I can do this backsplash. So my grandpa gave me an old fashioned tile cutter that you like, it's not a saw, like it's literally you put it on there and chop it like it would like paper. So I'm like, I'm gonna do this dang tile backsplash in the kitchen. So what I didn't think about before, like I mixed my grout and I was all ready, is the fact that I was 33 weeks pregnant and I had to get on the counter to do the backsplash. So I'm like laying on the counter, my belly's up against it, and I'm like stretched out really, really big to try to put this tile backsplash on with a YouTube video propped up on my phone. Now, was it a good learning experience? Absolutely. Did the tile backsplash look good? No, it did not. But is my point that you can figure anything out? Yes. I promise there's a YouTube video on it. And now there's some things within the home renovation process that are scary and people don't want to touch. They're just uncomfortable. Fine, hire that part out. You know, one of my favorite ways to learn, the guy who still partners with us on a lot of our flips for the construction side of things, his name is Russell. Russell and Bobby would come over and help us out with this flip that I just remembered. And they would do things that we weren't comfortable doing. You better believe my pregnant little hiney was following Russell around being like, how are you doing that? What are you doing there? What's that big tool for? Ooh, I've never seen that. And we learned from the contractors that we hired. So our first few flips didn't have near the profit margin that the ones now do, for a number of reasons. One, we know what we're doing, but two, because we use those flips to learn. And I always said, if I could just learn for free, sign me up. Most times you have to take a college class. You pay a lot of money to go to college and learn. But in real estate, our mindset on a lot of these was The first few, if we could just learn what we were doing and not have to pay money to learn, deal. Sign me up right now. Not to mention, a lot of the houses that you buy that you're just learning from, even if you don't make money on the flip itself, you could keep as a lot of tax write-offs. There's a whole nother video about that. But at the end of the day, don't be scared that you don't have the skills, because you're only going to learn the skills by doing the activities. So another question that you can ask yourself is, who is your who? If you don't have the skills to do the water, to do the sewer, to do the electric updates, who's your who? Is it your uncle? Is it a contractor? Is it somebody you just found on Craigslist? Is it a handyman who you're passing down on the street who maybe would want some extra work? You would be shocked at the number of people who you can go out and find and partner with on some of these things. And sometimes you pay them up front. We've worked out deals with contractors who were like, hey, get in here, get work done, and we'll pay you a percentage of the proceeds on the back end. It's really just finding people's motivation on how they want to do work and what they want to do, and then finding somebody that you jive with, especially on these first couple of flips that you're doing. I'm assuming you're new because you're watching the Myths About Flipping video. Find somebody that you jive with, that you can work with, that you can trust, and get in there and learn with them, and you never know where the partnership will go. I already mentioned Russell. Russell started working with us back when we only had one kid about 8 houses ago, and he was referred by a handyman. He and his brother just did some work on the side, all good to go. And we've now been working with him for, gosh, at 7, 8 years. He's partnered with us on some of the Airbnbs that we've done where he was able to work and write off his labor and then become part owner in the house. And so there's so many opportunities like that where you, as the person kind of heading up this operation, can provide opportunities and learning incentives for the people in your life in exchange for what they know. I would have never, I was going to say I would have never known how to lay a tub without Russell, but I still don't know how to do that. So that's a bad example. But anyway, I digress. Not having the skills is no reason not to get started. So the third excuse that we hear from people all the time is, this is just bad timing. And currently right now, interest rates are on the rise. We're mid 2023 and people are still thinking that they're going to get interest rates in the 3% instead of the 7%. And so there's a lot of people who just aren't buying right now. And I say people because people aren't buying, but you know who is buying? Hedge funds are buying. Do you know what hedge funds are? Hedge funds are I'll probably get criticism from this, but hedge funds are really rich people who all pool their money together and go diversify their investments. So they're not all in the stock market. They're like, hey, go buy this big commercial building here, go buy a bunch of little houses in Kansas City. Hedge funds are buying. And my thought process has always been, if the smart rich people are buying something, a lot of something, even if I could just buy a little of that something, probably a pretty good investment. So the whole this is bad timing thing, I think it's total crap. I think it's absolutely asinine. There is no bad time to buy a house, in my opinion. There's just not, because it's an investment, because we work on exit strategies, because there's always multiple things you can do with the house. If the housing market crashes and people can't buy, you know what they need? Rentals. People have to have homes. So to me, there's no bad time to buy. Now, there might be a bad time for you personally to start with a flip process. For us, I don't know that we've had any time in our life when it has been a good time to do it. We just do it anyway. And to the destruction sometimes of our family and putting ourselves in some hard situations, but you kind of just rip the band-aid off, because real estate and house flipping is not for the faint of heart. It's for people who want to grind. It's for people who want to get in and who aren't afraid to do the hard work. So if you're like, oh, this is bad timing, it just doesn't feel right for me, you might not be cut out for it. But if you don't mind some hard work, if you don't mind going straight from your kids' soccer games to tear a carpet in a house, because you know that you're going to build long-term wealth for your family and that house is going to bring you $700 a month if you can get through 6 months of work on it, then maybe this is a game you want to play ball in. You know, the other thing that people tell me all the time is, I'm just not ready yet, like almost. Once I do this, once I get this, once I go there. And what I like to point out is, whenever you're getting started in this, it's not like, oh, Tuesday, July 17th, I'm all of a sudden ready to go, and I'll just like go find a house Tuesday, July 18th. The process of finding a home for most people takes 3 to 6 months, and that's if you're actively looking. So if you're not ready today, but you think you might be ready 6 months from now, start looking at houses. Go look at the properties, go look at the flips, go walk them, and make sure that you're in the market looking. And if you come across a good enough deal, then you just might all of a sudden realize that you're ready. But if you don't ever take that first step, you're never going to get anywhere you need to go. So the other thing is just like logistic time frame. If you know that you're going to be ready to start on a flip 6 months from now, you need to start looking right now, because here's how the time frame plays out. It's going to take you 90 days to find a house. Unless you just needle in a haystack, it's going to take you 90 days to find a house. So 90 days to find the house, then you're going to put a contract on it. And if you're not buying it cash, you're going to have to go through a 30 to 60 day loan process. That's, oh, now we're up to 4 to 5 months. And then you're going to have to order everything because you don't want to order it before you close. All the stuff's going to have to get delivered. So now you're up to 6 months. So if you tell me you want to flip a house in 6 months, I'm going to say, chop, chop, sister, let's go find one because it's time to start. So that's myth number 3, I believe. Bad timing, no such thing. Today's a better time than tomorrow because I'm going to buy the house today and you're going to miss out on the one tomorrow. So how's that for some motivation? All right, another thing I hear people say all the time is I have to get my real estate license first. If you go to any real estate school, it is probably 50% people who want to dive into the crazy real estate market and 50% people who want to be investors. Now, there is a time that it makes sense to have your real estate license, but it's not on your first house. Do not add that to your plate. Do not add that thousands and thousands of dollar expense. Do not think you need access to the multiple listing system to find deals. None of that is true. As someone who's had a real estate license for, gosh, almost 10 years now, I can promise you, you don't need a real estate license to find a house. As a matter of fact, it really can complicate things on the back end having your real estate license. So let me debunk a myth right now. You are not going to get access to any additional homes by having a real estate license, period. As a matter of fact, it may shrink the pool of homes that you can buy for a couple of reasons. Number one, I, as a licensed real estate agent, have to have a very different conversation with people I'm buying homes from than you as a non-licensed real estate agent. There's a lot of fair credit consumer protection plans out there where I have to disclose certain things to a buyer or to a seller who I'm buying a home from. I have to tell them what the fair market value of their home is right now. There's a lot of code of ethics things that go on behind the scenes. However, if you're a layperson on the street and don't have a real estate license, you could walk up, knock on the door, and if he wants to sell you his house for $100,000 under market value, you can sign the contract. Now, there's always some other pieces of the pie there that, just being a good person and not taking advantage of people. But there's a lot of real estate teams out there who have someone unlicensed doing exactly that. And there's a strategy behind it. So that's one reason, just not to get your real estate license. The second reason is a lot of the deals that we have found, I'm trying to think about this now. Probably half of the deals that we have found were brought to us by other real estate agents. And I didn't take a commission on any of those that we purchased. As a matter of fact, sometimes we made a deal with the agent on the back end. Hey, if you come across a cool flip, we'll make sure you get paid on the front end and you can list it on the back end. And the reason is real estate agents who are out there talking with all the grandmas and grandpas and estate sales and people who need to sell old, outdated houses, they're the ones who you want the listings from. And if you go get your real estate license, you're not just going to fall into 1,000 houses that need flipped. Now, you may be able to network and work with agents, but in that case, network and work with agents as a buyer and make them that deal that I just said. I promise they will work harder for you as a buyer looking for flip houses than they'll ever work as like a fellow agent next door. Whenever I call people, I say, hey, it's Rebecca. I'll pay you on the buy side and I'll pay you on the sell side of this house. Bring me a deal. As a matter of fact, we just inked one this morning for somebody who brought the buyer on a flip house. He's making a lot of money off of it because we knew that that's how you get access to the people with the leads, is you have to pay for them. So if you become a licensed real estate agent, it's not just going to flip a switch. Now, there is some really good information out there that you can gather, but you don't need to do it before you find your first house. And, there's also something to be said for working with an agent who's an investor-friendly agent who can almost be like a safety net for you. They can help you run the numbers. They can help you look at contractors. And they're going to be a little bit more invested in being your support system as opposed to like just, me and you agent buddies next door. We're talking about a house. If you have an agent representing you, they're really going to be involved in this and have more of a buy-in. So do you need to get your real estate license before you can start? Absolutely not. Finally, this is something that people tell us once they get a little bit further in and start to get scared. They're like ready to go. They have their money in line and they're like, well, crap, I don't even know how to make a budget. Well, I don't know how much a light's going to cost. I don't know how much flooring is going to cost. Okay, well, fair. You should be able to make a budget before you go buy this house. But we have a cool new tool that we just released, and it's literally a playbook of every single flip that we have done and how much it costs. It's our price per square foot, which gets a little flaky, but as long as you're diving in and looking at a home with a similar square footage, you'll be fine. It tells you exactly how much it costs us to renovate a bathroom with links to the tile that we use, with links to the lights that we use, with links to everything. What we wanted to do was to package a resource that we could have used 10 years ago to scale to where we are right now. Because to me, that's what's the most value is, we've been doing this so long now, we have case study after case study after case study of what we've learned, but what would it be like if I could just give that to you and say, here's every lesson that I learned from Rose, from Grandview, from the Pizza House, from the Springfield House, from the Holland House. Here's the lessons I learned. Here's the materials I used. Here's the link that I used to order off Amazon. Here's why we use Amazon, because it's shipped directly to the house and you get a 10% rebate. There's 1,000 things that we could teach you and learn. So if not getting started, your biggest fear is that you don't know how to make a budget, we'll stick a link in the comments to that resource. Go in, download it, and knock yourself out. So thanks for hanging with me today for all the tips about how to get started in real estate and all the myths that you should absolutely not listen to. My best advice is just get started. Worst case scenario, you pay a couple $1,000s to have a really good lesson, and the next one, you're not going to make that mistake again.